Skyeblu Cutchie is a wild feminine embodiment guide, a spiritual mentor and sexual reclamation coach who supports women and couples in rediscovering the truth of who they are beneath the conditioning, the trauma, and the shame that many of us face. Through somatic practices, sacred sexuality, intuitive guidance, Skyeblu creates powerful spaces for transformation, helping her clients come home to their bodies, unleash their creative life force, and reclaim pleasure as a birthright. Her work is deeply personal, rooted in her own journey of healing and radical self-expression. Skyeblu now walks beside others on a path of embodied awakening, sensual liberation, and soul truth. Wow, that's quite a lot there. Thank you so much for joining today. You're very, very generous to give us this time and just to, hopefully explore a little bit with us the topic of intimacy, communication, and relationships. My first question I wanted to start with was, what was life like for you in your formative years? Who were you as you were growing up?
Oh, that's a great question. And thanks for having me, by the way. That was a beautiful intro. Growing up, so I grew up in the USA in Washington State,
Mhm.
and I grew up in like the middle of nowhere. I grew up like in the mountains. We call it the boonies, and it was a cattle farm. It's near Loomis, Washington, up by Canada. Is kind of the closest I can pinpoint it. And I grew up with my mom, my adopted father, and I had a little sister and a little brother. And I grew up outside, like all of us, in nature a lot. I loved animals. I always had a best friend who was my dog, rode horses, and nature was kind of my saving grace. And I did have a tougher childhood because my parents, they struggled emotionally, and they had kind of an abusive relationship. So I did experience some significant childhood trauma growing up, and I kind of, well, I'm sure that pushed me towards being a relationship and intimacy therapist, which is what I do now, because um, I had to go through a journey, a healing journey, and a self discovery journey to unlearn a lot of things that I learned as a kid, um, to become more comfortable with intimate connection and trust and how to create safety in a relationship because I wasn't shown how to do that.
Mm.
And now I'm able to help other people learn how to do that. So I feel like that was the silver lining to how I grew up.
What was your relationship like with your body and your voice growing up? Were you very confident in your sexuality? Were you very guarded because of your sort of parents' relationship? What was it like for you with your peers?
That's a great question. I was very distrustful of my peers. I got bullied a lot as a kid as well. And so I was very distrustful. My relationship to my body, I would say I was kind of dissociated, not very connected, sadly. Um, I think I was just in survival mode mostly. And so it took me a long time to trust other people.
With the trauma and I think the sort of conditioning that you had obviously had an impact on your emotional well-being and your physical connection. How did you go about? And this might be the wrong word to use, but how did you go about almost unlearning what you had been taught or what you'd embraced to have a different connection with your emotions and your physical self?
Yeah. So I knew from a young age, like starting probably from my teens, that my childhood was distressful,
Hmm.
was damaging for me in some ways. And so in my 20s, I started taking all these psychology courses at university, and I absolutely loved it. And one of them was a psych of sexuality, and it was so cool. It just blew my mind. And I was like, this is awesome. I was so passionate about it. And that kind of set me on a path towards becoming a sex therapist. I mean, that journey took 12 years to actually get to this point. But then when I was in my master's program to be a counseling psychologist, I was being triggered by all of the things that we were learning in school. And I was like, I need some help. Like, I can't show up for people like this. And so I started seeing my first adult therapist. And
Mhm.
she was amazing. I saw her for 3 years, and she started me on this healing journey, learning about myself, learning about like how I want to show up in relationships, learning how to name my emotions, learning how to heal my nervous system. And ever since then, I've had a therapist. I still have a therapist. So, therapy has been a huge part of my life. And then, of course, I've been with my partner since we were 15.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so we grew up together. And we have had to learn how to connect, right? There's been huge ups and downs, but I think part of my journey has been like trial and error in my own relationship along with my professional training, which has taught me a lot. And then I apply it to my life. And then I'm like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And then I teach it to people too. So it's just this cycle.
It's really interesting that you've been with somebody through very different phases of your life. Yeah, so many people you sort of almost jettison whole parts of their life when they start to fully embrace who they are. So yeah, so how I mean, if you're comfortable answering this, how challenging has it been to be somebody that has changed? What's the right word? Changed has evolved so much over the last decade or so, and to be with the partner that knew you before you went through all these changes.
Mm, what has that been like for me? Um, Transformational, I would say, is the word. It's
I love your word.
um, kind of like, we were talking about tattoos before this because I have a bunch of them. And I have a tattoo on my hip that is a phoenix, and it's a very girly phoenix. But I really identify with that. Um, it's the bird that uh, dies in the flame and becomes the ashes, and then it's reborn out of the ashes. And I got that tattoo because I really identify with that. I've been through a lot of hardship in my life, and I feel like I've been able to pick myself back up, over the years and out of the struggle, and become the person that I am today. And I feel very proud of myself for all of that. Not to say everything's perfect, because no one's perfect, right? But I think that's how I would describe what that's been like.
Hmm. I love. I'm not sure what the plural of phoenix is. Phoenixes, phoenix eye. No, I love phoenix, and I love.
Yeah.
Sounds very silly now. I love Harry Potter and the sort of phoenix that comes from the ashes, and just the phoenixes are so beautiful. They just such
Yeah.
a incredibly powerful, strong, and yeah, very magical creatures. Um, I wanted to, I guess, go back a little bit. So I've got a 15-year-old son, an 18-year-old daughter, and both of them are fabulous. But when I talk to them before I was doing this podcast, another podcast, and talk to them about what I talk about,
Mm.
just curious to understand what their experience at school was like of sex education or intimacy education or relationships. Because when I was at school, it was very much
Mm.
right. Avoid STIs. Wear a condom.
Mm.
Um, that was pretty much it. And so I talked to them. I must have changed so much. They're like, well, not really. They talk a bit more about consent now, which is good.
Mm.
But I said, well, did they talk about intimacy and communication and relationships? They just looked at me blankly, really. So
Mm.
I think one of the big challenges I think we have in society, I feel like I'm getting very profound now, is that there's two things we don't talk about, which is sex and money, and both of which are very important in very, very different ways. And I wondered how you work with people and how you foster this in yourself, really, when somebody's not had
Mm.
guidance what intimacy is or what relationships are all about, how to communicate. How do you start with that process? When somebody says that I've been with the same partner for a long time, or I haven't been, I'm not sure what I want from a relationship, I'm not sure what desire is, and I tolerate sex and that's about it. But how do you start with people when they come to you with that sort of,
Mm.
yeah, I guess, lack of knowledge or intent about intimacy and relationships?
Mm-hmm. So when I work with folks, and specifically women, and they come to me and they're like, my husband wants to have more sex. That's often a catalyst. And I will always, I always want to know, well, what do you want? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for your relationship? What would you like to be experiencing? So I want to turn it around. It's not about this other person. It's not about society or what your mom thinks. Like, I want you to think about what you want. And a lot of women don't know, because this is a muscle that we have to work. It's like going to the gym. The I what I want muscle needs to be worked out. And if you haven't worked it out for maybe your whole life, then you're going to start with something really small and light. You're going to start with little 2-pound dumbbells, right? And that's where we start with intimacy work, is just asking yourself, well, what do I want? And
Mm.
I like to start outside of the bedroom, because if we start inside the bedroom, I think for a lot of folks that can be very intimidating. So we start outside of the bedroom. And I will ask them to ask themselves every day, what do I want to eat? What do I want to feel like right now? If I want to feel energized or relaxed, how can I help myself feel that way? Do I want to see a friend? So you're asking these things that we think about, but what I have experienced is that most people just do these things on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've said I'm going to see a friend, so I'm going to go do it, but I'm not asking myself if I want to. So we start outside the bedroom, and then we kind of go into the bedroom, and I ask people things like, what type of touch would feel good to me? And instead of what do I want in the bedroom, because that can still feel quite intimidating. So,
Mhm.
what type of touch would feel good to me? And then, so you see, it's very layered, and we start very soft and very gentle, because what we don't want to do is jump in the deep end, because that can feel very scary and intimidating. So that's one way that we start. And the other way is we go all the way back to the beginning, kind of like the questions you were asking me earlier. Like, how did you grow up? What kind of
Mm.
things did you learn about sex and intimacy and relationships? Because all of that will inform how you're showing up now. So we want to do some self discovery, and we also want to work your what do I want muscle.
I very much like the fact you very quickly get away from discussing what somebody else wants of somebody and hone in on what that person wants of and for themselves. And I think that, again, that goes back to our younger selves when we hit puberty. Typically, our first sexual exploration is with ourselves. we masturbate, we
Mm.
touch each other, and depending on your upbringing, your parent might slap your hand away if you have your hand down your pants when you're 2 or 3 or whatever, or you might be sort of, oh my gosh, I need to do this quickly because somebody might come in the bathroom or the bedroom or whatever. And I
Mm.
think it's quite rare that we actually, men and women, spend the time to explore their own bodies and just calmly think about, well, how does that feel? How do I feel about that particular part of my body, or that what that sensation feels like? And then if we don't if we don't do that, it's very hard then to first of all know what we want with our partner, or to be able to communicate what we want. So I totally align with your thinking around. It's so important to know
Mm.
yourself and not say, well, this person wants this, and they're either expecting a, oh, that's ridiculous, or well, that's very normal. It's not that. 'Cause it's got to be about what do you want yourself really. And if you've never really thought about it, it's yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? What
Mm-hmm.
do you want? And even one of the things I find frustrating in my relationship is I might say to my wife, "Oh, should we go for dinner tonight? Where'd you like to go? Oh, I don't mind. Where do you want to go? Oh my goodness, no, just say, just but people don't. People think they're either no, no, I don't want to. You decide. No, no, you decide. And you end up, no, let's stay in there. Let's not go out. And I think that's the thing with lots of things really, where we, like you say, that the whole, well, what do you want? And so often we've been programmed to think to, no, no, what do you want? I know we still must feel we're doing the right thing, but it's lovely when somebody else takes the lead really. And there were a couple of other things I wanted to just touch on. I
Mm.
think one of which is that I think, I guess, the external influences that we see, whether that be a magazine, a regular television show, porn, or whatever, they all set expectations or give us impetus as to what sex and intimacy should be like. And I think the stat is now that most 13-year-old boys have seen pretty much whatever porn exists by the time they're 13. And at 13, you don't even know what a relationship is. So when I was growing up, porn was a magazine. And there's a picture of a naked woman. It was like, oh my God, the woman's got no clothes on. Oh my God, I can see her breasts. That was so thrilling. But now, if you were relatively young going into a relationship, or you're older, and you think, well, why doesn't my husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever wants to do these things? Or surely they should like to do these things. And it's really hard to extract what society is pushing upon us, whether it be in music or literature or television or porn or whatever, and actually create, well, what is it that you like? Because
Mm.
we're almost, depending on your point of view, force fed or drip fed what we should think. And I think that's a challenge. And how do you feel about all the external influences we've got to filter, or not push away, but interpret, I guess,
Mm.
if we want to understand our own relationship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so complicated, and I can relate to this on a personal level. Um, and so I promise it'll relate. But growing up with my family, I love them to death, but we have problems with body image in our family culture. We can be very fat phobic. So growing up, I really believed that I was fat, and there's nothing wrong with fatness, but in my mind at the time there was. And so I was very self conscious of my body, and I never wanted to show my body. I would never wear shorts, for example, until actually in my 30s.
My
And
goodness.
yeah, and so this affected me in my intimate relationships because I didn't want to show my body and I was so self-conscious, and kind of made me believe, like, how could anybody like want me or love me or find me sexy? And so I was getting these messages from my family. I was getting these messages from, like you said, movies, magazines. Like, we're constantly
Yeah.
bombarded with what sexy should be like.
Hmm.
And then when I got to the age of like viewing porn, like that really influenced me as well. So I'm just an example of how everyone is influenced by these things. And what I like to say as a sex therapist is we need to keep in mind, and this should be part of our sex education, but it's not, that these things, all this media and all these messages, they're created for entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Movies, porn, magazines, books, it's all entertainment. It's not based in reality. So there's nothing wrong with entertainment. We want those things. They're fun
Hmm.
sometimes, they engage us, but we can't compare it to a real life relationship or a real life sexual connection because they're going to be very different. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is like an education thing. Um, so I would start there by just making that differentiation between the two. And then I would start to ask people, well, what do you want your sex life to look like? And what do you want your relationship to feel like? So don't base it on the entertainment because that doesn't make any sense. What do you want it to look like in your real life? Because it gets to look however you want it to look.
Hmm.
And there's no right or wrongs.
So, what was the catalyst for you being more comfortable with your body? Would you say you love your body now?
I do. I'm very curvy. I'm 5'1", and I'm just this very curvy little person. And I really embrace the curves, including my hair. You know, it's curly now. I used to want it to
Love
be
the
straight.
curl. Mm.
Thank you.
It's funny, isn't it? People with curly hair always want straight hair. People with straight hair with curly hair.
Yeah,
It's yeah,
it's
truism. But
funny.
no, I think curly hair is yeah, curly and curvaceous. It's yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
win-win. Isn't it? But yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So for the most part, I really love my curves now. Um, I think what helped me get there is this process I'm talking to you about. Like asking myself, like, what do I like about my body?
Yeah.
Um, I think for folks who are really detached from their body or have a lot of criticism for their body,
Hmm.
starting from a place of appreciation can be helpful. Like, I really love the fact that my legs took me on a walk today. That's awesome. Or I love that. I love the way my eyes look. I love the shape of my smile. So you can start small
Yeah.
with appreciations or just little parts of your body, even your little finger. I love my little finger. It's so cute. And just doing that every single day because the things that we say to ourselves is going to affect how we feel.
Mm.
So if you're a person who's feeling really negative about your body right now, that's firstly okay. Like living in this world that is so critical of bodies, of course, a lot of people have negativity towards their bodies, right? But that doesn't mean that you have to stay there.
Mm.
You can start small. So if you want to change, if you want to feel differently about your body, start with appreciations, start with small parts of your body that you like, and just say it to yourself every day. And over time, like you start to feel it.
The other thing you said in the example before was that a lady might come to you and say, "Oh, my partner wants more sex, or wants more sex more often, or whatever." And I think one of the issues or challenges with that is how we have come to recognize or define sex. That we think of sex as being penetration, typically penis and vagina, ejaculation, that's sex. And it's, I guess it's again, it's almost a reconditioning to think about. well, what is it like to spend 15 minutes just looking at each other without touching, or what is it like to spend 5 minutes kissing or holding hands, or and that's yeah. Sometimes it's hard to do those things. I think a lot of people, if you're in bed with your wife, and I'll side with your wife in this instance, and you sort of reach over and you might sort of stroke her neck, which is normally the sort of prequel to sort of sex happening, and then your wife may well say, "No, I'm really tired," and it's almost like, well, it's either sex or it's nothing. And I think one of the challenges almost with the words that we use, we talk about foreplay, and it's almost like, well, we do this thing before we actually get to the sex. So let's do foreplay, then we'll have sex, and as opposed to thinking, well, but foreplay can be the sex, and how do you help with that? So when people come to you and say, I feel like my partner wants to have more sex, or I don't really I feel uncomfortable having sex, or maybe I'm going through perimenopause or menopause or whatever, or lots of different things, or the man's, as I get older, I find it harder to get an erection and keep an erection, etc. So I think, I can't have sex, so we'll just, and there becomes almost more and more distance between you emotionally and physically. So how do you almost, and this is definitely the wrong word, but how do you almost help people reprogram what sex is? Does that make sense? That was a ridiculously long question or long statement.
No, that it's perfect because I talk about this a lot.
Okay.
And it's one of the things I get excited about is that sex can look like anything you want it to look like. So what you're describing is what I call the staircase model.
Okay.
So if you imagine a staircase that goes
Hmm.
up and up and up, there's a beginning and generally there's an end.
Yeah.
So the beginning might be the neck stroke that you talked about. And then what most people think of is like, okay, there's a sign that we're going to have sex. And
Yeah.
then we start kissing, maybe we start stroking, maybe the clothes come off, we have oral sex, and then penis and vagina is usually the goal.
Hmm.
Orgasms are the goal, and then we go to bed.
Yeah.
So that's a typical staircase model. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people do it, a lot of people enjoy it. And if that's the only way you think of sex looking, like if I ask you what does sex look like and that's the only thing you think of,
Mm.
it can be limiting for a lot of the reasons that you brought up. What if the one person with the penis can't have an erection and then PIV doesn't happen? Does that mean that the sex failed? That it
Mm.
wasn't bad? What if the person with the vulva, uh, what if she has sexual pain and she can't do PIV? What if you can't or don't want to have an orgasm? Does that mean the sex was bad or it failed, right? So there's limitations to only thinking about sex in that way. So what I recommend, and this can be challenging for some people because if we've thought about something one way for our whole lives and then we're like, what? Like that kind of expand your mind is hard. But I think of it as a Ferris wheel.
Hmm.
So with a Ferris wheel, it's round, there's a thing in the middle, and then there's little carts around the outside. Each of those carts can be whatever you want it to be, any sort of sexual, pleasurable thing.
Hmm.
So it could be, I'll give you some examples. Could be like central massages, central showers, could be oral sex, could be PIV, could be, playing with toys. And then these things can or cannot have penetration or orgasms with them. So penetration and orgasm become a part of the menu and not the whole menu. And then if you think about sex in this way, it takes a lot more communication. Like, hey,
Yes.
honey, I want to connect, but I only just want to like make out in the shower tonight. How would you feel about that? And that can be sex.
Mm. I like the idea of this Ferris wheel of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked a little bit before we hit record, and I was saying that my children are of an age where they'll be leaving home relatively soon, and my wife and I are sort of here, obviously, hopefully together. And yeah, it's been a while since we've had that conversation, I guess, really. And like you
Mm.
say, sex is, kiss the neck, stroke the neck, etc., etc., which is still fine. That's a terrible word, isn't it? Fine. It's like nice. It's just a terrible word. But I guess because whereas when we first started dating or going out together, we'd be doing this or doing that, or not to say we were hanging from chandeliers or anything, but it was different because we were exploring what each other liked really. Then I think you settle into perhaps a sort of pattern of what you like or liked, and then I think 20. It can be depending on the relationship. I guess could be 6 months, could be a year, could be 5 years, could be 20 years where you get to a point where you think, either I really like to try this, or I would just like to hold the person, I would just like to kiss them, I would just like to whatever. Or there's this thing, God, that thing we've done for the last 20 years, I never really enjoyed it. and I've talked to people
Mm.
before on the podcast, and this was saying, it's almost the worst thing that can happen is like you were saying, you have the conversation not in the moment, but if you're in bed with somebody and finally after so many years somebody bursts out and says, I hate that, or I've always wanted to try spanking you or whatever. And for the person in their head, they've been thinking about this for 6 months or 2 years, but the person that's hearing it thinks, you want to spank me? Are you a pervert? And it's like, gosh,
Mm.
they throw that back, and before you know it, you're certainly not communicating with emotional intent.
Mm.
You're hearing and mishearing what each other is saying. So how do my wife and I, other people in similar situations, how do we have that conversation without ever saying anything's been bad or been good or whatever?
Mm.
How do we have that dialogue? So, and I think you use the phrase, which I really like, a pleasure without pressure. And
Mm.
how do we get to that stage?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks feel a lot of anxiety
Hmm.
when it comes to talking about sex, because of reasons that we've talked about, like
Yeah.
maybe growing up in religion or just growing up in
Yeah.
certain societies like America that's
Mhm.
more taboo and more reserved, or maybe you've been doing the same thing in bed for 25 years. And so thinking about talking about or trying new things can feel intimidating.
Mhm.
So I want to take the pressure off. I want you to take the pressure off and try to think of it as just an exploration. Just because we talk about something doesn't mean we're committing to doing
Mm.
anything. The metaphor I use is it's like, well, funny enough, you brought this up. When we talk about what we want for dinner, and sometimes that can be an easier conversation, but like you mentioned, sometimes even that can be hard. So it's about continuing that conversation in a way that is from curiosity.
Mm.
Oh, I really want Chinese food. Well, I'm not really digging that tonight. What about like Thai food? How would you feel
Mm.
about that? Oh, maybe getting closer. Maybe Vietnamese. Talking about sex can be like that. Like I would really love a sensual shower. Well, I don't feel like getting wet. Could we just like, what about playing on the couch tonight? Okay, but I don't want PIV. Could we just play with our hands tonight? Okay, that sounds good to me. So it's this curious navigation um, that is not always easy, and I recognize that, but that's kind of where taking the pressure off can get you. Is if we can also understand that if someone says no, I don't want that same thing, That it doesn't mean, no, I don't want you as a person. It's not necessarily a rejection. It's a, I don't feel like eating that tonight, but I'd be up for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps the conversation going. And if you're coming from a place of curiosity, that can really help people not shut down. If I hear my partner say, oh, he doesn't want to get wet, that's really interesting. I wonder why. Like, oh, where's that coming from? But also, I respect that. That's okay. I'm going to get curious and I'm going to get explorative and think of maybe something else we can try. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think the food analogy is a very good one. I think there's, certainly in the UK, you read these surveys every now and again that people eat have the same 7 meals every 7 days for life. They don't ever change. Like, say somebody, yeah, we always have Chinese. What about Cambodian? Oh, I've never tried that. I don't think I like that. But what do you know about it? Do you want to try a little bit? Do you want to try maybe get some Cambodian starters and something else? Okay, and 100%. I hear what you're saying. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Is just helping people explore it, and I think there's a difference between what somebody might fantasize about, talking about sex now, not necessarily food,
Mm-hmm.
and what they might want to do in reality. And you'll have read the studies that, I don't know, something like 50% of women have fantasized about a domination fantasy, but so have 35% of men. But it's not necessarily saying that we want to be dominated or taken by a stranger. That's not what we're saying at all. It's just, and you were saying you listened to a podcast that I did a while ago with a lady called Alexa, and she's a dominatrix, absolutely delightful. But she was saying that a lot of reason men come to her is almost not the physical element of sex. It's more the fact that they want to be submissive in a world where typically men have been taught to be more dominant and less submissive. So a man feels very uncomfortable, perhaps saying to their partner of 5 years, 10 years, whatever, I'd really like to be just submissive tonight, so you take control. And rather than have that conversation with a partner, they'd rather go and pay somebody separate to take that part of their life with them, which is, I have no issue with somebody going to a professional to do that, but it's very sad, I think, if somebody feels they can't at least have that conversation, and then the partner might say, well, no, I'm just not comfortable doing that. At least they have the dialogue. But again, it's how it's phrased, and that it's not just thrown into conversation over dinner. That's why I do think, and I was saying this to somebody the other day, that we'll often spend, I don't know, whatever, $1,500 a year on our phones, when the other one was perfectly fine. But say to somebody, right, well, what about spending $500 going to see a therapist or a sex coach or a guy for 3 or 4 sessions? Sort of pull against it. I do think having somebody like you, having you almost guide the conversation between partners, I feel the conversation will be much more genuine, because when it's one on one, naturally it can be a very adversarial situation. If we fight, we fight one on one. If we love one on one. But with another person in the dialogue, it feels like there's more guidance that can be given. And is that how a lot of work that you do with couples comes about? That they perhaps just need somebody that can not umpire them, but sort of help manage the process, because it's hard. I've not had this conversation before, and the person I'm going to talk to hasn't had the conversation either. And I'm like, God, what do we say? If I say the wrong thing, are they going to hate me? But having somebody there that can say, well, no, all the fantasies that anybody's ever had, somebody else has had them as well. So unless it's illegal, believe me, somebody else had the same fantasy. It can be a fantasy. I talked to somebody the other day, and one of her clients, she was a sex worker, he fantasizes about elevators. Not having sex in elevators, just elevators. It's extraordinary. So no matter what it is, someone else has had it. So when couples do come to you, is part of the and it's a massive responsibility you take on, is to help them have the conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, it's such a long question. I'm going to say yes to the answer, which, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is. It's because folks come into the room with so many anxieties, so much baggage,
Yeah.
history, maybe
Hmm.
traumas, beliefs, and values, and those things affect our sexuality. So, part of my job is to hold space for all of those things and normalize them and validate them. Um, but also, it's helpful having a sex therapist who can be that third person. Like, I'm not a part of your relationship. So I'm not necessarily like in it with you, right? When there's partners who are in it together and it can feel so messy and it can feel so heavy and scary, having someone like myself in the room with you can feel like provides safety, I would say,
Yeah.
that like this person is holding space for me. They're also not like in it with me. They're calm. They can be the voice of reason, maybe.
Hmm.
But as a trained professional, I can also offer you like my perspective, like based on the things that I've learned and the things that I teach.
Hmm.
So, like what you're saying, if one partner has a fantasy, such as being attracted to elevators, and the other person is like, I do not get this. This is weird. What's going on? I can help both people sit with it and be like, can we maybe get curious about this?
Hmm.
See if there's any part of that person that would like to feel curious about this rather than just showing up with the fear or the judgment. And just because we have that conversation does not mean this person needs to participate in this fantasy if they don't want to.
Yeah.
I think that's part of taking the pressure off.
Yeah. And how important do you feel that the emotional connection is in, and I would say reigniting as opposed to maintaining? How important is the emotional connection in reigniting physical desire? Because sometimes over the course of a relationship, we can take our partner for granted, and we might feel more distant from them emotionally. Therefore, that can manifest itself in feeling more distance from them in an intimate level. So, how important is the emotional connection side of things?
I would say for most people, it's very important. I think there are some folks who can have sex just to have sex. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's awesome too.
Mhm.
I find working with people in long term relationships, and especially for women, I know men like it as well, but especially for women, um, it often, if there isn't a lack of emotional connection, if a woman is feeling unseen or
Mhm.
unheard or unimportant, she's going to feel way less open and willing for sex and intimate, like physical intimacy.
Mm.
I think part of it is like we're in a world where a lot of women are objectified, um, and we feel objectified. And so, unfortunately, if a partner or a husband who's male is only paying attention to us or touching us when he wants sex, the woman can feel objectified in her partnership.
Mm.
So I'm not saying he's doing that on purpose, but I'm saying that's how it can come off as
Mhm.
in her experience. So making time to connect emotionally is so important, and it can open doors, makes people feel more willing and open for sex and intimacy, helps people feel safe, helps people feel respected. And for women, it helps them know, like, oh, you don't only want my body, like, you want all of me. So I would say it's really, really important for most relationships.
It's funny, isn't it? You often think or feel or hear that, okay, men have sex to feel close, women need to feel close to want sex. It's almost the same but very different, and it's yeah, there's something very different about how we think. But being emotionally connected with somebody, like I say, is not expecting to sort of ignore somebody all day long and say, right, so sex tonight. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel good, and for lots of women, whether they're at work or with friends or whatever,
Mm.
they are viewed or can feel that they're viewed differently from men, and no matter how much we might want to think it isn't the case, and I might want to think it's not the case for my daughter, and my daughter and my son will be treated exactly the same no matter what they do. The sadness is that isn't how it is right now.
Mm.
And what role does, if any, what role does spirituality play in your intimacy and your sexuality? And when I say spirituality, I don't necessarily mean a named higher being, but your spiritual connection with nature and with being part of nature. What does spirituality and sexuality mean to you together?
Mm. I mean, for me personally, I'm a very energetic person. I consider myself to be very spiritual. So I have to feel, for me, it means I need to feel really safe to um, to be willing to give my sexual energy to someone else.
Hmm.
So if I'm feeling any sort of tough emotion, or if I'm not feeling safe, like I'm pretty shut off and closed down. So that connecting emotionally part is very, very important for me personally. Um, and then, like, I guess spiritually, connecting with my partner in sexual ways that we both feel very gratifying, like very satisfying and fun. And that feels very like energetic and very spiritually connecting for me. He's not a very spiritual person, but for me, it does feel that way. Like it really fills up my energetic cup, if you will.
Mm. It's funny, you were talking before about you're going to get a sure well vacation next week, and it made me think. I've had I wouldn't say a friend, an associate for a number of years, and he had an affair, and he was very open about the affair. Well, at least with me and some of his colleagues, not with his wife, obviously. But he would sort of come into the office, I don't know, once a month or however often he'd seen this other person. Say, oh, it was fabulous. Went to this really lovely hotel, and we just relaxed. We had room service, we had sex. No, it was great, and it's just nothing like that with my wife. I don't know how. And I sort of talked to him. I said, but you're not comparing like for like, are you? When you're at home, yes, the kids need their story read to them. Yes, they need their sports uniform washed for tomorrow. Yes, your wife's tired from work. Yes, all these things, and you're not. And that's why often I think when we go away on a holiday to a hotel or a cabin or whatever, we have very different sex because we're relaxed. And we are, like you were saying, we're in the moment and we're feeling supported and valued, and we are the focus of somebody's attention. So, and he really couldn't see it. So, well, because the affair you're having is almost a fantasy lifestyle. And you hear so many times people break off a relationship and go off with the person having an affair with them. Once that becomes normal life again, it's not what they want, because they want this almost elusive sex on tap, where they turn up to the hotel with a bottle of champagne, nice lingerie, and it's a wonderful evening. But then nothing else counts, and that's yeah. I do really
Mm.
like what you said about feeling safe and almost to a place where you can allow yourself to feel vulnerable in a very emotionally secure way, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I just when you were saying before about going away on vacation, I thought it's gonna it'll be a different dynamic that week than this week where you're sort of busy and your partner's busy and you might pass each other and you might even have dinner at the same time together. when you suddenly got that time together, whether it's this guy and you had that affair, or you're on a vacation, or it's, and then how do you bring almost small snippets of those? Because you can't be on vacation for our whole lives. So how do you bring small snippets of those into your life? Is it date nights? Is it getting a babysitter? Is it going out for a walk together? Just doing those things together where it is just the two of you. You don't have to worry about the washing up or the shopping or the laundry, all those sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so important. You have to prioritize it, right?
Yeah.
Like after the first 6 to 12 months of a relationship, things you go from the bonding stage, which is important, and that's where you have butterflies and endorphins in your stomach. And after a period of time, usually around 12 to 18 months, like you move into a different stage of a relationship, and you are more filled with oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical.
Hmm.
So it literally feels less exciting in your body. But that's normal, right? All relationships will go through that. It doesn't mean you can't still feel excited and connected, though, but you have to do it differently. You have to put in the effort and the time, the thought. You have to plan those vacations. You have to daydream together. Like, what do we want to do? It's going to be so exciting. There's this new restaurant in town that I really want to try. So even if you're trying new things together that are small,
Yeah.
that is really good for your relationship.
Mm.
You can do big, huge, fancy things like we're going to Bali for the first time together. That's exciting. But the little things are really important too, like weekly dates. I
Hmm.
definitely recommend those. Emotional check ins. Like my partner and I, we talk every day, but even at least once or twice a week. Like, how are you doing? How was your week? What are you experiencing? What has been the most exciting part of your week? What has been really hard? Like, having these intentional conversations is really important. So, like, I think of your friend, for example. I don't know his situation, but I think a lot of people who have affairs, they have these unmet wants and desires of,
Yeah.
of connection, of fun, of excitement, and they're not getting it from their long-term relationship, but I wonder if they're putting the effort in
Yeah. Absolutely.
to get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It doesn't feel often. It's like, well, everything else has failed, so I'll have the affair. It's almost, wow, these are things that I want. It's almost easier to go somewhere else to get them. And when you said about going out to try a restaurant, we went out a few weeks ago for lunch. It was lovely. We just had lunch together in the middle of the week, and it was fabulous. And I looked across at the table sort of behind my wife, and a couple that were younger than us sort of sat there, and I don't think either of them looked up from their phones once, apart from to acknowledge the waitress
Mm.
when she came over to bring their food. And I think, wow, just and that's again changed since I was a youngster. But yeah, this whole connection with phones that are just there, that omnipresent. And if we can't even spend an evening out with our wife or our husband or our loved one without looking at the phone, or not even looking at, just being on the phone the entire time, it's just, so it almost says to me, almost just a sign you'd rather be somewhere else as opposed to with the person. So phones are wonderful, and we have the ability, technology. You and I are connected from across the other side of the world, and it's easy conversation. I can see you very clearly, and it's lovely. But it's almost, we have the technology to be able to connect with anybody anywhere in the world, but it feels that we're almost losing the ability to connect in person. Do you, what do you feel about that?
Mm. This is an interesting philosophical question that I've thought about a lot, though. I think that, like you said, technology is, there's so many amazing things about it,
Yeah.
and I love it. And I'm a virtual therapist and a virtual coach, so I do all of my sessions online and podcasts online. It's so cool. However, I think that phones and screens and computers are kind of like little slot machines, right? They're designed to give us dopamine boosts
Yeah.
that keep us hooked, that keep us on, keep us going. And just like if we were at the casino all day long trying to talk to our partner who's beside us, that wouldn't work very well. So we do need to make intentional time to have no screens.
Mm.
Go on a walk, leave your phones at home. Don't look at your phone when you're at dinner. Maybe don't just sit down and watch TV while you're eating dinner every night. Like it does create a disconnect. And Esther Perel was talking about this recently. Esther Perel is a famous intimacy coach as well. And she was saying people are having way less sex, and she thinks it has a lot to do with screens and like not being connected during the day.
Yeah.
And I do agree. I think that if we are not being responsible and keeping an eye out, we can get sucked in. And I can do that too. Like as an online coach,
Mm-hmm.
I can get sucked into my computer for hours and I have to be like, okay, I need to disconnect and I need to go on a walk with my partner and just like talk and just be face to face. So it is kind of this new phenomenon of our time. We have to manage it.
It is, but I think the casino was a very apt comparison. I think 'cause it does have flashing lights and noise and music and stuff, and it gives you just enough dopamine at a time, so you keep going back for more. Like the casino, you don't lose every hand for 20 hands. You might win one every five or win one every three, and it's like, oh, okay, the next or the slot machine. It lets you win a little bit each time just to keep you putting more and more money into it. But there's lots of research that shows a lot of couples they finish the day off with, I don't know, however long it is, half an hour sat next to each other in bed on their phones. Or one person as the other person gone to sleep, and the first thing they do in the morning is check their phones. And it's pretty hard if you're both on your phone and then sort of leaning over to your partner and try and instigate some sort of romance. We get partners, yeah, let me just finish watching this video of this dog falling over. It's yeah, I do think you were very correct when you said. I think it's a lot of it is about being intentional and being mindful about what you're doing, and to invest that little bit of time really. And
Mm.
and another thing, I know a phrase you use now I really like is about having a pleasure first approach to intimacy. And how can you
Mm.
how can I embed a pleasure first approach to intimacy with my wife?
Mm. That's a great question. So, pleasure first. It's all about like what feels good to you, what feels good to your partner,
Hmm.
and I would say checking in a lot. Like, like what would feel good for you right now? How would you like me to touch you? Is this good pressure? Do you want it a different way, a different part of your body? Too fast, too slow? So, a lot of communication, checking in with her as well. And if she wants something different, like knowing that that's okay. It doesn't mean she doesn't want you. It just means that particular thing is not feeling very pleasurable in that moment. And you can just change it up. So, it's also about exploration. Like what might have felt pleasurable yesterday might not feel pleasurable today. Or even 30 seconds ago, that felt great, and now I don't want that anymore. And that is all okay. Like just normalizing that. And I would say that's about pleasure first. And it's a lot about consent
Hmm.
too. Like, is everyone feeling pleasure right now? Is everyone happy and satisfied with the type of pleasure they're receiving?
And that's one of the interesting things I've learned doing this podcast, talking to some people in their words in their sort of BDSM or kink communities. And one of the things that they are very good at is communicating and talking and almost creating the scene beforehand. So having this is a yes, this is a no, this is a maybe, this is what my red is a stop, yellow is slow down, try something else. And I think as in a so a regular sex,
Mm.
we can tend to sort of follow the motions really and don't have that checking. And we certainly don't sit downstairs before we go upstairs to bed and say, right, so tonight we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And do you think we don't? You just sort of you think, well, these things are just going to evolve, aren't they? But I think, one of the things I learned from talking to people in those communities where there's perhaps more experimentation is the importance of creating a safe environment, creating an event that's going to happen, and then afterwards to not in a sort of corporate HR way, but afterwards to sort of review the event and say, well, we hadn't tried that before, or that was a little bit different. How did you feel? And this is how I felt, and have those discussions because you don't want to make intimacy almost a paper exercise, but I think having that review, and if you think of a better word than review, having that sort of
Mhm.
touch base afterwards. And it might not be might not be the second afterwards you just finished. It might be the next day, or when you're on that walk, or when you're going for that lunch or whatever. Yeah, so that was something I learned from a
Mm.
community that does tend to experiment more. Is that
Yeah.
well, just let's talk about it beforehand, let's talk about it during, and then let's talk about it afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
that has, yeah,
Yeah. I love that. And I agree. I think what the kink community does very well is a lot of open communication, a lot of consent, a lot of checking in, like during and after intimacy. And I think that all folks at, outside of that community could use that. It doesn't have to be super crazy structured. It could just be
yeah,
like, instead of just the sign, the look, or the touch, like, oh, now we're going to have sex and we all know what that means. Like, we could pretend we don't know what that means and
mm,
we just want to get curious, like, ooh, you want to have some sexy time? Okay, what sounds exciting for you tonight? What do you want to try? What would feel good to you? How do you want me to touch you? And just have that free flowing, fun conversation.
mm,
And during, also checking in, like, how is this for you? I like this. Can we change it up a little bit? That hurts now. And then after, this is something I do with my partners. I always ask, like, what was your favorite part? What did you like about that? Or is there anything you would like to change for next time? And it doesn't take very long and it's very easy. And at first, a few years ago, he was like, this is kind of weird. Why are we talking about this? And I was like, well, I want to know. I want to know like what you liked and didn't like. How am I supposed to know if I don't ask? And now it's just this normal thing. And it's a nice way to connect as well.
and would you say you're still learning about your sensuality, your creativeness? Are you still developing as a couple and as an individual? Are there things that you're still experiencing or trying?
Of course. Yeah. I believe people are changing every second, every minute of the day.
We are, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Just because I'm a sex therapist doesn't mean I have like the most amazing, ideal sex life ever. You know, there's some fantastic parts about my sex life, and there's parts that like need to continue to be worked on or explored, or like sometimes things didn't go the way I wanted them to. And, I think that's just a normal human experience.
Mm,
Um, but I'm constantly learning new things. Like when I work with clients, I'm learning new things. I have to do trainings to keep my license.
mhm,
And so I'm always learning new stuff professionally as well. And I like to bring that into my own life. And then, with my partner, he's always changing too. So when he changes, I have to assess, is
Hmm.
that something I want to lean into with him or not? Like in the bedroom, for example, if he's like, oh, I have this new kink I want to try, I have to assess, like, okay, is that something I want to be curious about? Or is that a hard no for me? So we're constantly ebbing and
Hmm.
flowing, as me as an individual, but also in a partnership. I believe that that's always happening.
Hmm. And you've been very generous with your time. So just two more questions, if that's okay, and
Sure.
I'll let you go and enjoy your day. Um, the the first of which, and this is one that always concerns me when, well, first of all, I find that people that are as connected and passionate about what they do as you obviously are, that what you're doing is it feels like almost well, not almost, it feels like a calling as opposed to a choice. So you've been called to do this, which I think is fabulous, and I know you've helped many people who wouldn't have been helped if you hadn't been around. So thank you on their behalf. But the question I have is, that you obviously at times will hear some difficult stories. Some people will come to you with trauma. Some people will come to you with very difficult experiences. How do you how do you continue to protect and nourish your own mental and physical well-being and not carry the burden of trauma with you? Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very sweet question. Um, like I said before, I'm a very energetic person.
Mhm.
I consider myself to be a highly sensitive person, an HSP. So
Yep.
I need it. First of all, it makes me great at my job.
Yeah.
I think because I can feel what other people are feeling in my body and in my
Mhm.
own emotions, and I feel their energy, which is really helpful. I can hold space for folks, and it's a real gift. And I really have to have some serious self care practices, because I'm kind of like a sponge. I
Yeah.
soak everything up, and I have to have practices that get it out of my body. Their trauma, their stories, their emotions. I have to let them go. Um, or, back in the day when I was a new therapist and a coach, I didn't know how to do that very well, and I would get sick. Like I would get
Yes.
physically ill. So I have practices like being in nature, going on walks. I need a lot of like downtime.
Mhm.
Like just, I like to play video games. So I will just be alone and have my snacks and play a fun fantasy video game and just like live in my fantasy for a little while. And that helps me. Um, Connecting with the people that I love, with my partner, friends. I recently reconnected to playing volleyball.
Okay.
I hadn't done it since high school, and I just love it. It's so much fun. So
Hmm.
taking care of my own spirit, that is the way that I cope with sucking up
Hmm.
everyone's stuff, not in a bad way. That's just what happens to me. And then I
Yeah.
have to intentionally like get it out and care for my own spirit.
Mm. Well, it's good to hear, and I think it is, if you are authentic or as authentic as you are, I think it is important to, yeah, be fully in the moment with the client. You don't want to sort of push things away, but then you do have to find a way. And I talk to other people, and they dance it away, or they walk away, or they video game it away, or whatever. Just having
Yeah.
something that, yeah. And I'm always, I went to see a therapist here, and I was sort of not suspicious, but I felt uncomfortable that there was somebody coming out of the room as I was going in, and somebody waiting as I was going. I thought, well, gosh, look, this. And it wasn't a sex therapist. I guess it was a regular therapist. Anyway,
Mm.
and it was like, gosh, oh, my diary's tab. I'm seeing 11 people today. I thought, well, how can you possibly
Wow.
be there for each of them and then be there for yourself? And then my final question, if that's okay, is,
Mhm.
and I don't know whether you are a very forward looking person, but do you have a feel for what the next chapter in your book looks like? Do you have a feel for the next 5 years? What does the future hold for you, do you think? What do you feel?
Yeah, thank you. I do. I have a plan actually that
Yes.
I'm leaning into. I have this, so I have sex therapy business, which is called Skyeblu Therapy, and I have my coaching business for women, which is Intimacy with Blue. And I'm leaning into Intimacy with Blue because I want to serve more women. I want to reach more women,
Mhm.
and I'm starting some group programs to create community. I've already started a Facebook community that's a free way to support people. And that's been really fun. There's like 1,000 women in there already. But I'm creating these group programs for women. It's called From Roommates to Romance, to teach them more about some of the things we talked about today, like how to connect with your
Mhm.
partner, how to reconnect with yourself, and ask yourself what you want, and bring all that energy into your relationship so that you can really connect with your partner and you can get out of the roommate cycle. So that's my plan right now, and I'm really excited about it.
That's a great plan. And I said that was the last question, but I lied. One more question. So, when you're celebrating your 80th birthday, just many, many years away, and people are, maybe your partner and your friends are giving little speeches about you and about the person you've been, etc., what what will they be saying about you?
Hmm. Yeah, that question makes me feel emotional. I I want them. I really hope that I made an impact in their lives. I hope I made them feel safe and seen and heard and important. That's what I hope.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for that answer and for everything else. I'm really interested to listen back now. I was listening, but when you listen back, I think, oh gosh, yeah, it all ties together. So,
Yeah.
no, thank you for your time, and I think you're doing a really, yeah, really great thing. And it's very energizing to see and hear the experiences you had in younger life. And yes, they were traumatic and difficult, and people would want to go through this, but it does feel that they have informed and guided the person you are today. So, in some small way, there's sort of gratitude to be had for the experiences we go through, I guess. But I think, yeah, it's yeah, it was lovely to talk to you. So thank you, and I look forward to yeah, staying in contact hopefully.
Thank you, Andrew. I really enjoyed our conversation. And do you mind if I tell people about how they can connect with me?
Oh gosh, no, no, no. I'll put lots of links into the notes as well. But yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So if anyone wants to, if any ladies would like to connect with me, I do have a free Facebook community, and I can give Andrew the link if that's okay with him.
Perfect.
And I have a free guide. It's called Your Sexy Menu, and it's a way to like kind of get curious about the things that you might want in the bedroom and for your intimate life.
Mm. I'm going to download that as soon as we get off this call.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, take care.